it goes beyond your logo. It goes beyond your color. It goes beyond all those like the graphic elements to stuff. And it really focuses on how you show up as yourself in your business. It like essentially is your own values, because your building blocks of life, your values of who you are as a person are going to spill over into who you are as a brand and a business. And it is all encompassing. It trickles down into if you have staff, it trickles down into your customers, it trickles down into every move you make.
Welcome to the Marketing Mirror podcast, where we help guide and navigate you through the ever-changing world of marketing. So, no smoke and mirrors here, just the unfiltered truth served with a side of wit. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Marketing Mirror podcast, hosted and presented by Search and Rescue Marketing Agency. I'm Matt Bork. I'm actually one of the partners and chief listening officer at Search and Rescue Marketing Agency. And I'm with the brilliant Ali Matos, who's also part of our team and one of our content creators.
Hello.
How you doing, Ali?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing today, Matt?
I am doing okay, thank you. I'm excited about this one. I'm really stoked to dive into this one. So I want to talk to you on this episode about what is your brand saying about you? And I know that that's something that, it's an interesting topic. It's also one that sometimes, when you hear truth and you're like, oh, that can sting a little. But at the same time, it can be like, oh, this is awesome. I'm hearing things that I did not even know people thought about us, which is very, very cool. So before I get into it, I thought I'd read kind of a little stagnant thing that I wrote about this topic, just to kind of lead us in. And then I want to get your opinion, your thoughts. And I know that you're going to take it a whole different way that I'm going to take it, and I think it's going to be great. So let's get started. In social media marketing, the content and messaging you share on behalf of your brand play a crucial role in shaping how your audience perceives you. Essentially, what is your brand saying about you refers to the images, values, and personality that your brand conveys through its online presence. And it's important for businesses to regularly, in my opinion, actually, and I think that you would agree with this, but evaluate and refine that social media strategy just to make sure that what the brand is saying aligns with their overall goals and resonates with their target audience. I don't even know where to start with this one, because to be honest, there's a lot there. And I do really, really want everybody that's listening to just practice bravery, take a deep breath. Because this is going to take listening. It's going to take some listening, take some time. And you may hear things that you're a little bit nervous to hear. But to be honest, I think, I try to teach my daughters that sometimes the most difficult conversations are the ones that we grow the most from. And I think ultimately what we want to do is we want to be able to, have a brand tone, personality, voice, spirit aligned in everything that we do. So I kind of just, now that I've kind of started with that, I just wanted to get your kind of first thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, I think that you're right. There's a lot that can be attached to your brand. And, we've talked about this in the first few episodes as well, is, the listening aspect, the storytelling aspect. I think your brand in itself is to your point, everything that encompasses and brings it back to center, right? It's your values. It's how you're perceived. It's how you show up. And I think when we talk about branding for me and how I kind of perceive it on our end, when we talk about content creation and we talk about how you show up, it goes beyond your logo. It goes beyond your color. It goes beyond all those the graphic elements to stuff. And it really focuses on how you show up as yourself in your business. It essentially is your own values, because your building blocks of life, your values of who you are as a person are going to spill over into who you are as a brand and a business. And it is all encompassing. It trickles down into if you have staff, it trickles down into your customers, it trickles down into every move you make, right? Not just to be dramatic, but it's it really is an experience. How do people experience your business? How am I experiencing your brand? All comes down to how you show up. And so to me, when we talk about even just, again, showing up with our audience and an experience, it's really your values, and that's spilling into your photography and videography, your social media content, and the messaging that goes behind all of it.
So are you saying consistency through all of it is probably something that's incredibly important?
100%. 100%. When you're talking about even a small business, your goal, I would say, is no matter if you are one person in your business or your company has 1,000 people that are staff. If the messaging is clear, if the foundation of your business, your values how you want to show up, how you serve people in your community. All those things should just be like multiplied. And when it's strong, yes, it'll be consistent throughout.
I love that you said how you serve them, because that's awesome. Like absolutely awesome. So what do you do in a situation like, and I know that you and I've come into this before, where the brand, the team, they're not all on the same page. Right. And that's the difficult thing, is that when you look at your brand identity, what is your brand saying about you? The interesting thing is your target audience is going to tell you so much more about the way that you come across, your person. And it's, we've heard it before, when you confuse, you lose. And in this world of spending majority of our time on autopilot, I mean, I think that, like, I remember hearing something like we spend 95% of our day, because our brains don't want to burn calories. So we spend 95% of our day cruising through life on autopilot.
Yeah.
That 5% that we spend when we're really focused, apparently our brains are struggling so hard to just focus that it's exhausting. We just don't want to be in that situation. So when you think, okay, when we're on, 95% autopilot, what makes people stand, like, what's going to make people stand out as a brand, as a business? And I think that's why it's important to reflect and to go look and say, listen, like, we are, it's lucky if we're getting in front of our target audience. And when we do, we want to make sure that it adds value to their life, that it serves them. I love that you shared that about serving them. So, obviously, like, I can go into like a lot of areas, but let's just start. There was a couple that you talked about that you wanted to start off, and I think it was with photography and videography. Do you want to start there?
Yeah, I think like really it's just talking about when we kind of hang out with our clients and we start talking about like their goal to, and we talked about this in our storytelling episode as well, but when they're building out their story, when they're saying, okay, I want to show up, this is what I want to, either it's a product that they're trying to sell, either if it's just the story, their brand story, right down to their branding for their photography. That's why we kind of distinguish, like for even photo shoots, the difference between just doing content creation and then also branding, because content creation is, products and how they kind of live in the world. That's all amazing. Branding is you. Branding is literally you showing up. And so what we tell our clients all the time is like, okay, well, if you're going to want to portray yourself to your people, there's two pieces to it. It's you showing up in your business to, attract your ideal client. It's also just you showing up in your business, how to storytell, and how people can connect with you. Right. So what we like to do is really kind of map out. And so I'll give you an example, working with one of our clients. Okay. They wanted to do a branding shoot, and okay. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. Okay. Well, let's say I'm a realtor. Okay. Well, if you're a realtor, okay. So of course, we're going to maybe pick locations that have like homes in them. But if you're specific to selling commercial real estate, well, we're going to want to take some, photos and video in front of there. Are you fun? Are you loud? Are you silly, right? Let's show that in your branding. What are your values? What's important to you? Is community important to you? Then showing aspects of you in the community that you live in, like literally showing up in the place where you're talking about it. It's kind of one of those things where you try to map it all out. It's not scary at all when you kind of come down to like the base of it, is really just showing up in those places. And so that's why branding is important in that aspect, because it's who you are and how you're showing up. So when we're doing photography, videography, anything like that, we want to make sure it's unique to you. I don't want to copy and paste. This is not a copy and paste type of situation. Oh, so-and-so was doing this, so I wanted to do it. And again, we've talked about this in listening and in storytelling. It all kind of comes down to who you are and how you want to show up in your business. And so I think that's a huge piece to it. And when someone knows who you are, when someone is strong about who you are, your messaging coming across, you've done your job right. When they can say, yes, I know exactly who Matt is in his business. I know his values, what he serves, because anything that you do moving forward, you've got my support, right? We've talked about this in storytelling, that it builds trust. It's going to be the same thing in your branding. If I know who you are in your business, when you show up, I'm not shocked. Like I tell this to clients all the time. It's like, okay, well, if you're someone who wears sweatpants all the time, then I'm not expecting you to show up to your shoot wearing like a 3-piece suit with like an eye monocle and top hat. Like this just doesn't work, right? So it's really just uniquely you. You are a representation. It is a promise to your community, is a promise to, the staff, your clients, all that you're showing up authentically as you. And I think that's where you can be very clear. And once you're clear, there's no misconception about you, of who you are. You have already trust, and now I trust you. And so now I'm going to follow you. And I think that's a huge piece for sure.
Okay. I don't really need to say anything else because that was amazing. That was phenomenal. It's like, as you're speaking, I'm like, all right, I can add a lot of things, but then it's just kind of why add, I'll take it from a different perspective then or not a different perspective, but change the way that we're kind of flowing in the conversation. But it's interesting, when you look at the whole phrase, what is your brand saying about you? And because I love what you shared is like having that consistency throughout absolutely everything. So if somebody goes on your website, we know that we have like 3.7 seconds, I think it is, to grab somebody's attention before they've gone. So what do they find out about you, about who you are? And then when they go to whatever social platforms that you're on, are you social on them? And if you're social, what's your brand personality, the tone, the visual elements that you use, the engagement, like the content quality, are you authentic? Do you share about, as you mentioned, community building or social responsibility? Are you adapting to social trends and things as they go? All of that says things about your brand and about who you are. And especially how awesome is it when all of your marketing efforts all are the same? And then the coolest part is exactly what you mentioned when they show up to your business. So whether it's a service or product, whatever it is, they're like, you're the exact same person. And all that does is that now you've built trust, which is what we're all after as it is. And we've talked about that in previous podcasts. And so that's why when we actually take a moment to reflect, when we sit back and go, okay, I'm going to take a look and see what is our brand saying? And realize, wow, our website is not saying at all what, our social is saying. Our social, we're portraying this and this. Well, right away is now we're confusing. So who do we believe? And this comes up quite a bit with businesses. They don't realize how ultimately, social media marketing is not its own standalone marketing strategy. It's supposed to be used most effectively. You want to use it with an overall marketing strategy. How can this tool help to lead all the way down? So let's just say that we spend time, your brand online is saying something about you on your social platforms. And that person's like, this is awesome. I really love these people. I love what they stand for. They seem like they're a great company, everything. And then they're guided to what? To the little link that's in the bio. And all these little nudges of just you, the brand being the brand on social. And then they click on it and it takes them to what? Maybe their website, and they get there like, who is this? And we've all experienced that before. And you realize right there, it can fall flat. And that's it. And it's really sad because, to be honest, it's like all that was needed was a cohesiveness, of maybe doing a bit of a revamp, which I love doing with companies. And I love that at Search and Rescue, we offer that, is to be able to come alongside and say, hey, listen, you've got all these things in place. These are awesome. All we need to do is a little bit of a revamp here so that it remains consistent. We're not making them burn brain calories thinking you and I, how many times have we showed up at a website is this still the company? And so it makes you and you look and you're like, is this still the same company that I saw over here? Because they look like this is here. But then when I get over here, or there's a sale on the website that is better than the sale that you actually saw on here. Well, why didn't they just tell me about that sale in the first place? Right. And then actually, hang on a second, Costco's got it for a better deal, or it's actually a better deal at Walmart, or it's a better deal here. And you're like, why aren't they telling me these things? Right. And that's one of those things that if you're adapting and you're being curious and you're evolving, then I would how rad would it be if all of a sudden, on your email list, it's like, hey, listen, we just wanted you to know, it's super cheap at Walmart right now. You can go pick it up here. Or, we actually have it on sale here for this deal. This is the best deal here. And they're being proactive. And that's something that I think that people don't think about, is that cohesiveness. Even you mentioned it earlier, but the team, and when your team has to be on board, or not has to be, but they must be on board. But if they're not on board, all it does is it just gets incredibly confusing. And especially when you're trusting that your team is all following the same brand personality, tone, voice, authenticity, empathy, all the visual elements. And I was going to ask you, a lot of times people get really, really hung up on it's that's not on brand. And you hear it quite a bit and you realize, so when I hear that, actually, when you hear that, what do you think with that phrase? Well, that's not on brand.
You know what? We've always said when we started this podcast that we're going to show up authentically as ourselves. That's what we kind of sing from the rooftops. And so I'm going to show up authentic, and I'm going to say that it makes me feel so gross. It's so gross. It's so icky because people talk about it all the time about like, oh, it's not on brand. And what happens is we get lost in this whole idea that it's got to be specifically this. And we're so laser focused on this one thing that we miss out on all those amazing opportunities. I like to explain like branding, like a portrait photo shoot. So like, you know, if we're taking pictures of like a family and, you know, they're like, oh, here's all these poses that we want. And so then you're spending like so long trying to put them in these like, you know, certain poses because they got to look a certain way. And then what I end up doing is I'm like shooting in between all like the funny moments of like, maybe the mom's tickling the kids or the dad, or maybe they're in a fight and like the kids are like in like a headlock. Real life. And what happens?
It's all the real life stuff. Yeah.
And then what happens is that they get them back and they're like, well, I looked so awkward in these ones, which are the ones that they had asked for. And then they're like, well, we love all these ones. And I call them the in-betweenies because they were the moments, those micro moments that we get lost that are actually like the magic and the good stuff. So when we kind of talk about branding, that's exactly it. So when someone says, oh, that's not on brand, we get so hyped in having these perfect aesthetic things that it gets lost. Yeah. We are human. We connect to real things. And we talked about this in the last episode which is like also sharing some of our like, you know, sad moments and some of our difficult moments and how we've overcome them. Yeah. And so I think it's a mixture of ingredients, okay, to make the right story or the right brand. And so, yeah, I feel gross when I hear that because I think what happens is we get so laser focused on what we want that we lose out on all the things that we need. And yeah, like that's just, I don't know. It just, it kind of like riles me up a little when we talk about that because I think it's so common. And I'm someone who's had those moments too where I'm like, oh, it's not on brand, so I'm not going to share it. Oh, you know, my desk was messy and my colors are not the colors, my notebook that I have on my brand. It's like, that stuff doesn't really matter. What matters is like showing up true and authentic, right? And so, and sometimes it's not always put together.
Yeah. Through all your marketing efforts, right? Like even if it's print, if it's this, it's like showing up with that exact messaging that you just talked about in all your efforts. That's when you're doing it right. Right. Like, and I agree too. I feel the same way. And I also too, like, I constantly try to encourage. And so if you're listening to this right now, definitely one of the things we want to encourage you is to constantly be curious. That's one of the big things is to try things, to be curious, but also, as you mentioned, like, don't get set. Like, I don't mind trying things with your, like a client's way of saying, well, this is what it has to be on brand. I don't mind trying it. But be open to asking us, because I like to ask the question, why? So why do you feel this is so important? Especially if you've done the research to listen to your target audience and to know, this is going to speak with them. This is exactly what they're after. They're asking for this stuff. And we've even asked them and this is what they've said. Then it's like, oh, this is awesome. This is what we want to do. That to me then is on brand, right?
Yes.
But on brand.
Yes, exactly.
On brand doesn't just mean though, it's like, but we need our font to be this and our color to be this and to be that. It's like, okay, no, we're missing the point here. And I think that's why when we first originally started talking about the beginning of this podcast, I said, sometimes it's hard to hear the truth about what your brand is saying because people think, well, this is what our brand is saying. And then it's like, well, if you take a moment to actually go listen, it's like, so, you know, we're really enveloped in like, you know, we're all about authenticity. And then you go look at the feed and it's like, actually, that's not what it says at all. It's like, but our visual elements and our tone and our voice are saying this. It's like, that's okay. So I think also too, one of the things that you can do is to practice curiosity, to also ask other people, hey, what do you guys think about it? And I think that's our job at SNR sometimes. And I know that it's actually sometimes a nerve-wracking thing to say to a client. This is what, and so if you are, a business and you're not sure about what your brand is saying, you can reach out to us. I have no problems. Like our team would love to help out, and we're always going to be gentle. We're always going to be kind. But I also think too, that it's like, I'd rather know the truth. And that way I'm able to also practice, what I preach really in saying like, I'd rather make changes, right? Like I don't want to, I would just rather know, right? Yeah. Even if it feels gross inside, I just rather know.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think when it comes down to it, there's two things. Like your brand helps you connect on an emotional level. Like if you know who you are and your brand and your values and what is defined, it's going to connect emotionally. And I mean, people will follow, like we said, right? It's an emotional experience, and that makes your brand stronger. So right off the bat, I would say it's like the emotional piece. I think the other part too is adding value. We've said this, we talked about it a lot today, talking about value, offering it to our community, to our people, all those things. And we are much more than what we kind of say, right? Like there's more, it's in depth. Like we dive deeper. It's like almost like the surface level is like your business, but like brand in itself is like who you are. And I think that's where you go deeper in sharing those stories and sharing your values. And exactly once you have a set of what your values are, it doesn't matter. Like we said, it doesn't matter when it's, someone asking you a question, like you are literally living and breathing it. It is your mantra. It is your mission. And so everything that trickles down from there will consistently be answered and all come back to the same piece, right? Like it's all going to be under the same hub, and it's all going to connect.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. And I think that's one of the things I think you said it, it's like when your brand appears authentic. And it's like, well, if you appear authentic, and you're true to your values. And I think what you and I are talking about when it comes to values is we're talking about those core values, those values that are so deep inside of you, you live them out every single day. Right. Exactly. It's not the values that you put on the wall and then you're hoping we're going to live them out. It's the values and I mean, there's been many times where, I've walked into a business and just relaxed and somebody said, well, these are our values. And in my mind, I'm just feeling, well, you know what, I'll just hang out for half an hour and I'll just see how you guys live these things out. Cause then I'll be able to tell you what your values are. And that's one thing that I think that like when you look at that, I love how you shared that about appearing certain ways. It's like, I don't want to appear a certain way. I just want to be that way. So going back like through it all, I think that's one thing that if we can encourage like those businesses that are listening, if you do have a team, whether it's small, big, large, whether it's just one or two people, it doesn't matter. It's absolutely essential to make sure that you're listening to what your ideal audience, what your target audience, what your community is saying about your brand, what everything you're posting, what you're doing, what you're not doing, what all of those things are saying about your brand, and then reevaluating, because it is one of those things that I think sometimes, especially as businesses grow, they can lose touch with, well, the team is doing that. It's like, oh, but that's not on brand. Yeah. And when we say, obviously we can clarify again if we need to, but you can probably just go back and listen a little bit, but you'll know what we mean by that when we say that. But I think that that's the aspect of, again, when we start to get confused as to trying to find out who somebody is, we just will move on to something else that doesn't confuse us. And it might not even be the best decision. It might not be the right product or service that adds value to our life, but it just didn't confuse us. And so we moved on to that. Or we felt, well, I just feel like I can trust them. And that's where, I do think it's like, this is a great topic to speak about. And, I appreciated your feedback on it, because even I learned some things today that I was like, oh yeah, because it's a good reminder. Right. A good reminder that like, going back to, I just don't want to live a life where I have to try to pretend that I'm something with you and be like, oh shit, like what did I say to like Ali that like I built up this story and I said that. It's like, no, I want to be the same person that I am with you as I am with my daughters, with my partner, with my, like at work. I want to be that. And then what it is like, then you know that your brand, which is you just got to breathe there, man. That's it.
Yep.
The whole point of this is that, again, we want to add value to the people listening. So I appreciate everybody that's been listening to the podcast so far. And again, if you have any questions or topics that you want us to talk about, please reach out to us, because we would love to obviously not just be talking about stuff that doesn't matter to you, but we want to show you that we're listening to you as well and putting into action by creating content that adds value to your life. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on today's podcast. Hope that you got some amazing information that you're able to, really just think about and add value to your business wherever you're at, with your team, whatever they're, whether they be big, small, even if it's just yourself. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to us, because we'd love to help you. So Ali, thank you again for joining me. That was awesome. You taught me a lot today and I truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. I had a great time, and I'll see you on the next one.
All right. Cheers.